In my prior interviews with some of the people from the Maverick Party, I was a little dissatisfied with how lightly they weighed in on civil liberties issues. And for me, I think civil liberties are they're a Western value. If it's good for
100%.
Albertans, and civil liberties are, I want to hear Maverick talk about them. And when I haven't heard a lot from your leader pushing back against the lockdown. So I wanted to ask you about civil liberties and the lockdowns, what you think about those. Were they effective, and what would Maverick do differently?
Right. So, Sheila, first of all, thank you for having me, and congrats both on the lawsuits, by the way. I appreciate. Well done. On that, and I always say it, I'm running on straight up Western values, and part of our Western values are grit, perseverance, community, respect, but also freedom. A free West is a strong West. And I've always said that we support freedom. We never support anything that is mandated from the government, whether it comes to vaccines, lockdowns, etc. And I'm a big believer of individual responsibility.
All right. Joining us now, I understand he is live on Skype from the same district, actually, of Banff-Airdrie, is the candidate for the new Maverick Party, Tariq Elnaga, who joins us now. Tariq, nice to meet you. I know you've talked to my colleague, Adam Soos. Well, now you've got both me and Sheila Gunn-Reid. How are you?
Good, sir. I have been waiting for this for a long time to meet you both, so thank you so much for having me.
It's our pleasure. I tell you, that cowboy hat, you're making me homesick, and I see you got the shirt as well. Can you summarize for our viewers, especially for those of us outside? I'm based here in Toronto. We got a lot of viewers in Eastern Canada. Sheila and I tried to describe the Maverick Party. How would you describe it in your own words?
So we're a regional party that really looks after the interests of Western Canada. So we're running candidates only in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. And our core focus is exclusively Western issues. So what is good for the West is good for us. That's really the premise of our party. Now, we have tools as to how to do that, but what we're really looking at is equity, fairness, and true Western representation, an exclusively Western voice for the 4 Western provinces.
Well, I tell you, I watched that Quebec debate last night, and all they were talking about is what's good for Quebec, how much money can we wring out of Alberta to give to Quebec. That must have just got stuck in your craw as a Western party. I found it just shocking. What was your take on the Quebec debate last night?
Absolutely the same thing. So not once was the West ever mentioned. And this was supposed to be a French language debate, not a Quebec debate. But it was entirely about Quebec. And I look at it and I say, if you look at our party and you see how wildly effective the Bloc Québécois are in getting Quebec what it wants, well, why isn't it good for the West? Nobody has exclusively ever spoken for the West before. And I looked at all the issues, and then Legault this morning, I believe, said, basically endorsed Aaron O'Toole, saying his government would be the best government for Quebec. Well, what about what's the best government for Western Canada?
Mm-hmm. Well, let me turn things over to our Alberta Bureau Chief, Sheila Gunn-Reid, who I know has a great interest in Western issues. Go ahead, Sheila.
Well, and I'm someone who has some separatist sympathies, and I'm starting to sympathize more with the people of Quebec these days. I'm thinking that maybe they were early adopters of a good idea. But I wanted to ask you about something that in my prior interviews with some of the people from the Maverick Party, I was a little dissatisfied with how lightly they weighed in on civil liberties issues. And for me, I think civil liberties are they're a Western value. If it's good 100%. For Albertans, and civil liberties are, I want to hear Maverick talk about them. And I haven't heard a lot from your leader pushing back against the lockdown. So I wanted to ask you about civil liberties and the lockdowns, what you think about those. Were they effective, and what would Maverick do differently?
Right. So, Sheila, first of all, thank you for having me, and congrats both on the lawsuits, by the way. I appreciate. Well done. On that, and I always say it, I'm running on straight up Western values, and part of our Western values are grit, perseverance, community, respect, but also freedom. a free West is a strong West. And I've always said that we support freedom. We never support anything that is mandated from the government, whether it comes to vaccines, lockdowns, etc. And I'm a big believer of individual responsibility. So you take what you feel is appropriate risk for yourself rather than the government's telling you to. And what we have today in Canada is politicians giving you health advice, and we have medical professionals or unelected medical professionals giving us economic advice. And I think we have that completely backwards there. So I'm generally to answer your question in terms of a blanket statement, a free West for me is a strong West.
How many candidates are you running? You mentioned 4 provinces. I saw a poll a few months ago that showed the Maverick was in double digits in a number of ridings. Can you give us an update? I mean, what is your goal? I've been looking at some of the polls for the People's Party, and I think that they're going to do well, but I don't know if they're going to actually punch through in any one riding.
Right.
What's your goal? Are you guys trying to actually win in a riding, or are you looking to place well, second or third in a number of ridings?
Right.
Do you have a 2-election strategy? What's the plan?
Absolutely. So if you ask every single Maverick candidate, including myself, and I've been asked this question before, I'm in it to win it, Ezra. We want to send every single one of those candidates to Ottawa. Now, we're running a group of 30 Mavericks. The largest concentration is in Alberta and Saskatchewan, but we do have a couple of candidates in BC, and we have one in Manitoba as well. So we're starting to see representation across all 4 Western provinces. We are being very strategic with which ridings we're running in. So we're running in ridings that are overwhelmingly conservative because there is a decades-long attachment to the color blue here, and we don't want people to worry about splitting the vote. So statistically, there is no chance of splitting the vote with the Maverick candidates because what it is the riding is overwhelmingly conservative. So our quote-unquote worst-case scenario is a Maverick or a Conservative goes. Now, here's our strategy, and I want to address this because many of our, even our own members are worried about it. They're worried that if they don't vote blue, you'll get Justin Trudeau. We do not want a Justin Trudeau government. We hope that he gets a $600 million reward for calling this election by losing. But what we want is, right now, if you look at all the Western CPC MPs, they're not representing Western issues. So what we want to do is send a group of Mavericks, a block of them, not dissimilar to the Bloc Québécois when they vote for the interests of Quebec. And we go out and say, what is good for the West? And these are the Western issues that we support. What we do want to see is, if Aaron O'Toole needed a confidence motion to get him over the finish line, we will get him over the finish line without ever forming a formal coalition, because then that dilutes the Western message. But the lesser of two evils, if you will, between a Justin Trudeau government and an Aaron O'Toole government is to get an Aaron O'Toole government backed by a group of Mavericks that then say, if you want our support, well, these are the things we demand for Western issues. The first one would easily be scrapping the carbon tax.
All right. Well, let me give Sheila our last question for you. It's really nice to meet you, and I'm excited to learn a little bit more about the Maverick Party. And I can't help but wishing you well. I mean, it's exciting, and I think that the West needs a counterweight to the Bloc Québécois and the Parti Québécois and so many of the institutional preferences for that one province. Sheila, go ahead, wrap her up with Tariq.
Okay, so Tariq, what's the end goal? Is it just to be a counterbalance, or are you, if there ever becomes a juggernaut of the Maverick Party, what's the end goal? Is it to leave the country? Is it to form our own country? What's the end goal for the Maverick Party?
Right. So it's a brilliant question. And we found from all parties on either side of the aisle, left or right, that the West is getting no representation. Usually the government is decided not by the time Alberta votes, but by the time Manitoba votes. We want an exclusively Western voice. Now, we have 2 tracks that we're applying, the details of which are on our website and on our platform. But to summarize them, track A is what I call bringing back provincial autonomy to Western Canada on everything. So that's scrapping equalization. That includes managing our own provincial laws, managing our own provincial finances, and really, in essence, taking the power away from Ottawa and putting it back into the 4 Western provinces. Now, some of our members we have both. We have members that want to leave Canada, and we have members that say, you know what, we're patriotic to the Maple Leaf, but we're done with Ottawa's overreach. Now, as we build through track one and say, and start to what I really call, rather than a divorce of Canada, a divorce of Ottawa, and bring those powers back across all levels into the 4 Western provinces. If that is not enough, or if we haven't achieved the right tools to do it, not because Tariq said so or because the Maverick Party said so, if the Western Canadian voter, through a referendum, again, not dissimilar to the referendum in Quebec in the 90s, says, we want out, then we will be the federal party that supports that. But it's not what I say, it's what our party, it's really what the Western Canadian voter says. And that's the best thing about the Maverick Party, is we answer to exclusively one voter, and that's the Western Canadian voter. We don't need to worry about pandering or appeasing a voter in Quebec and Ontario. It is all exclusively about Western Canada.
Well, Tariq, I got to say, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for being such an energetic advocate. And I don't know, Justin, if you can call up some of that videotape of our Calgary reporter, Adam Sos, with Tariq out on some horses. Yeah. I tell you, that was a great video. We're going to say goodbye to you now because we got a busy night, but thanks for making time for us.
You bet. Thank you for all that you do, and congrats again. Thank you. All right. Take care.
Right on. There you go. Tariq Elnaga. If you can believe it, Justin Trudeau wouldn't let our reporters into the debate. We had to sue him in federal court, and we won. If you can help us crowdfund the cost of that lawsuit, please do. Go to letusreport.com. Thanks.